The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a long shadow across the crumbling town of Willow Creek. Once a thriving corner of dead America, the streets now stood silent, with broken windows, rusting cars, and abandoned houses whispering stories of a world lost. But deep inside an old, boarded-up community center, a small group of survivors huddled together, their eyes wide, listening for any sound that might pierce the fragile peace of dusk. Lena Hayes, a former schoolteacher turned leader of the group, pressed her ear against the wooden door. She could hear the wind pushing through the cracked streets, rustling papers and leaves, but no shuffle of feet. That was good. For now. Behind her, Mason, a teenage boy with a sharp mind and restless energy, fidgeted. "Lena, they're not out there," he whispered impatiently. "We've been hiding all day. We need to scout for supplies." Lena held up a hand to quiet him. Her rule had kept them alive: never assume the streets were clear just because you didn't see anything. The undead were patient. They waited, hidden in alleys or basements, ready to spring when you least expected it. In the far corner, Maria, a mother of two, gently rocked her young daughter, Emma, trying to soothe her trembling. Maria's husband, David, tightened the laces on his boots, glancing anxiously at the barricaded windows. "We can't stay in here forever," David muttered under his breath. Lena finally stepped back from the door, her dark eyes firm. "We'll go out at dawn. Tonight, we stay quiet. We stay alive." But unknown to them, trouble was already brewing. Outside, on the rooftop of a nearby building, a figure watched. Jonas, a former military scout, raised his binoculars and scanned the streets. His mission wasn't to help the group inside, he didn't even know they were there. He was hunting something else. Over the past few days, Jonas had tracked an unusually organized horde of undead moving across dead America. This wasn't the typical mindless mass, something about them was coordinated. They attacked in waves, surrounded buildings, cut off escape routes. It was as if someone, or something, was directing them. He scribbled a note in his small notebook: "Strange behavior continues. Need confirmation. Approach with caution." Suddenly, a soft scraping sound echoed from the alley below. Jonas froze, lowering his binoculars carefully. A shadow emerged, limping slightly, head tilted at an unnatural angle. One. Then another. Then 5 more. Jonas's heart pounded. The horde had arrived. Inside the community center, Mason's impatience got the better of him. As the others tried to rest, he crept toward a side window, peeling back the edge of the curtain just an inch. His breath caught. Outside, under the pale moonlight, dozens of figures shuffled into view. "Lena!" Mason hissed. She was at his side in an instant, eyes narrowing as she took in the sight. She didn't panic, she was too used to danger for that. But inside, her stomach twisted. They were surrounded. "Get David," she whispered. "And Maria." Quietly. Mason nodded and hurried off. Lena stayed by the window, counting the figures. 30? 40? She couldn't tell. But they weren't just wandering randomly. They were forming a perimeter. Blocking exits. She pulled back and took a steadying breath. They'd survived this long by sticking together, thinking ahead, and staying calm. Panic only made things worse. A soft voice by her side made her jump. "You saw them too?" Lena turned. It was Emma, the little girl, her big brown eyes wide with fear. Lena knelt, placing a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "Yes, sweetheart. But we're going to be okay. We've been through worse." Emma clutched her stuffed rabbit tighter. "Promise?" Lena smiled softly. "Promise." But inside, doubt crept in. This time felt different. Up on the rooftop, Jonas knew he had a choice. He could slip away quietly and report back to his camp, or he could try to warn the group trapped inside. He clenched his fists. Walking away would be the smart thing. But something about the way the undead were moving, how they surrounded the building, it made his stomach churn. He had to do something. Carefully, Jonas pulled a small mirror from his pocket. He angled it to catch the moonlight, sending quick flashes toward the community center's second-floor window. Inside, Mason noticed the flicker of light. He froze, squinting. "Lena!" She rushed over. Together, they watched the repeated flashes. Mason, who had always been a quick learner, recognized the old scout code. "Danger. You're surrounded. Stay low." Mason's eyes widened. Someone's out there. Lena's heart pounded. She hadn't dared to hope there were other survivors nearby. But now, the question was, could they reach them? Or would the horde close in first? As the moon climbed higher, the tension thickened. Inside the walls, the group whispered urgently, trying to come up with a plan. Outside, Jonas prepared to make his move. And all around them, the undead tightened their circle. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, a sound that sent a shiver through everyone, living and dead alike. Tomorrow, the fight for hope would begin. But tonight, they had to survive until dawn. The night felt colder than usual, as if the air itself had learned to fear what was coming. Inside the old community center, Lena paced quietly, her boots making the faintest creaks on the wooden floor. David was already at her side, his face pale but determined. "Who's sending the signal?" he asked in a hushed tone. "Mason thinks it's someone on the rooftop across the street," Lena replied, her mind racing. "Whoever it is, they know we're trapped." David rubbed the back of his neck. "If they can help us, we need to find a way to reach them. But with that many out there—" "I know," Lena cut in gently. "We can't just run for it." Maria approached, holding little Emma close, the child's face buried in her mother's jacket. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We can't stay here forever, Lena. Sooner or later, they'll break through." Lena took a breath. She wasn't just responsible for herself, she was responsible for all of them. They had survived together for months, and every decision she made had carried the weight of their lives. "We wait for the signal," Lena decided. "Whoever's out there, they're watching. Maybe they have a plan." On the rooftop, Jonas kept scanning the streets, counting the undead. He muttered to himself, "Too many. Too fast. They've never moved like this before." He adjusted his backpack and checked his gear, a short-range radio, a flare gun, and 2 smoke grenades. Not much, but maybe enough. Jonas knew time was running out, he had seen it happen in other towns. The undead didn't just surround and wait anymore, they pressed inward, breaking windows, testing doors, overwhelming defenses until nothing remained. He had to act. Jonas lifted his radio, tuned it to a public emergency channel, and whispered, "Anyone inside the community center, come in." Over. Inside, Mason heard the faint crackle and scrambled toward the emergency radio they had kept for months, hoping for a moment just like this. His hands shook as he turned the dial, adjusting the volume until the voice came through clearer. "This is Jonas," the voice repeated. "I see you. I can help, but you have to trust me. Do you copy?" Lena took the radio, steadying her voice. "Jonas, this is Lena. We're here. We're surrounded." "I know," Jonas replied. "Listen carefully. There's a supply truck parked 2 blocks south, just past the old diner. It's armored, still has fuel. If we can reach it, I can drive us out." Lena's eyes darted to David, who was already pulling up a rough mental map of the streets. "How do we get there without getting torn apart?" Jonas hesitated. "I can draw them off. Smoke grenades, distraction. But you have to be fast. No mistakes." Mason's voice cut in, urgent. "What about Emma? She's small. She can't run like the rest of us." There was a pause on the other end. Jonas's voice softened. "We make sure she's carried. No one gets left behind." Lena clenched her fists, her heart pounding. This was it. Outside, the undead began to press closer. Fingers scratched at the windows. Soft thuds echoed from the walls as the first waves tested the barricades. Jonas raised the flare gun, took a deep breath, and fired. A brilliant streak of red lit up the sky, momentarily blinding the horde. With practiced precision, Jonas threw the first smoke grenade into the street below, followed quickly by the second. Thick plumes of smoke spread, clouding the view and sending the undead into confused motion. Inside the community center, Lena gave the order. David, carry Emma. Mason, you're with me. Maria, stay close to David. We move on my signal, and we don't stop. They gathered at the back door, hearts pounding in sync with the heavy footsteps outside. Lena counted down silently. 3, 2, 1. They burst through the door, slipping into the smoke-filled street. The world was chaos, shadows swirled, growls echoed, shapes stumbled through the fog. Mason sprinted at Lena's side, his eyes darting left and right. David cradled Emma in his arms, running hard despite the weight. Maria clung to his jacket, gasping with every step. Jonas, watching from above, fired another flare, this time to the west, pulling part of the horde away. Come on, he muttered under his breath, you can do it. The group ducked behind cars, zigzagging through alleys, choking on the smoke but pressing forward. For every one that stumbled in their path, they pushed harder, driven by sheer will. Finally, the armored truck came into view, rusted but intact, its tires still firm. Jonas vaulted down from the rooftop, landing hard on the pavement. He met them at the driver's door, wrenching it open. In, he barked. They scrambled inside, slamming the doors just as the smoke began to clear, and the undead realized where their prey had gone. Jonas jammed the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life. Lena met his eyes, 1,000 unspoken questions burning behind hers. But there was no time. With a hard punch to the gas, Jonas drove the truck forward, plowing through the first wave of undead as they clawed at the sides. Inside, Emma whimpered, clinging to her mother. Mason panted, heart hammering. David kept glancing out the back window, watching the shadows fall behind. And Lena? She sat quietly, hands gripping the seat, eyes fixed on the horizon. They had escaped, for now. But dead America wasn't done with them yet. The armored truck roared down the cracked, ruined highway, its tires bouncing over potholes and scattered debris. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Lena sat in the passenger seat, eyes locked on the horizon. She didn't trust that they were safe, not yet, maybe not ever. Behind her, Emma whimpered softly, still clinging to Maria, while Mason and David watched through the narrow back window. They could see shapes staggering after them, smaller now, growing distant, but still moving, always moving. How much farther? Mason asked, his voice sharp with fear. Jonas gripped the steering wheel tighter. Far enough to lose them, if we're lucky. Lucky, Lena repeated softly. We haven't been lucky for a long time. Jonas gave her a glance, his eyes tired but determined. We're alive, aren't we? Outside, the land stretched endlessly, empty highways, collapsed overpasses, crumbled gas stations, the bones of a country that once stood proud, now hollowed out by the dead. Suddenly, Jonas slammed the brakes. The truck skidded slightly, tires screeching as everyone inside lurched forward. What the hell? David shouted, bracing himself. In front of them, the road was blocked, abandoned cars, wrecked buses, shattered concrete. A massive pileup that stretched for nearly half a mile, impossible to drive through. Jonas cursed under his breath, slamming his fist against the wheel. We can't go forward. Lena leaned forward, squinting at the wreckage. Can we go around? Jonas shook his head. The side roads here lead back into the city. That's a death trap. Mason stood up, trying to keep his voice steady. We can't just sit here. They'll catch up. Maria tightened her hold on Emma, whispering soft reassurances, though her own hands were shaking. Lena took a deep breath. We'll walk. Jonas turned sharply. Are you insane? With a child? Through open ground? We don't have a choice, Lena shot back. The truck's loud, they'll hear it for miles. But on foot, we can slip through, find cover. For a moment, no one spoke. Then David nodded slowly. She's right. We can't stay in here. Reluctantly, Jonas agreed. He grabbed his pack, checking his supplies, a half-empty canteen, a hunting knife, a small pistol with 3 bullets left. Not much, but better than nothing. Everyone, gear up, Lena instructed. Stay quiet, stay close, and keep moving. No one stops, no matter what. They slipped out of the truck, the cold wind hitting their faces instantly. Lena led the way, weaving through the tangled mess of abandoned vehicles, eyes sharp for any movement. Every car they passed told a story, a stuffed toy left on a back seat, a shattered window, streaks of dried handprints on a windshield. Silent reminders of the people who had come before and never made it out. Halfway through the wreckage, Mason froze. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Everyone went still. At first, there was only silence, the wind, the creak of a distant metal sign. Then, faintly, the unmistakable sound of shuffling feet. "They're here," Jonas muttered. "They're already here." Panic rippled through the group. Maria squeezed Emma tighter, and David moved protectively to their side. "Lena, what now?" Mason hissed. Lena's mind raced. They couldn't run, too exposed. They couldn't hide, no real cover. But they had one advantage, they still had time. "Jonas, you said you had flares," she said quickly. 2 left. "Good. We need to split them, lead them the wrong way." Jonas's eyes narrowed. "You sure about that?" "No," Lena admitted. "But it's better than standing here waiting to die." Jonas nodded grimly. "All right. I'll take one, you take the other." Without waiting, he jogged off to the right, disappearing between the cars. Lena went left, gripping the flare tightly. Behind her, Mason took charge, huddling Maria, David, and Emma together. "We wait for her signal. No matter what." Moments later, a sudden burst of red light shot into the sky from Lena's side, followed by a second from Jonas's direction. Almost immediately, the undead shapes turned, drawn toward the glow. Groans rose into the night, echoing eerily. Mason's heart pounded in his chest. "Now! Go, go!" They moved as one, darting between cars, keeping low, slipping through gaps and shadows. Every breath felt like it could give them away, every step felt too loud. Lena rejoined them just as they reached the far edge of the pileup, her face pale but determined. "They took the bait," she whispered. "But it won't hold them forever." Jonas emerged moments later, panting hard. "We need a place to hide." David pointed. "Look, over there. That old service tunnel. It might lead out of here." The group hurried toward it, slipping through the rusted gate and vanishing into the darkness. Inside, the air was damp, the walls lined with moss and cracked tiles. But it was a moment of safety, however temporary. Lena crouched down, catching her breath, her eyes scanning the group. They were tired, terrified, but alive. For now, that was enough. But in dead America, safety never lasted long. The tunnel was cold, damp, and narrow, the kind of place that smelled like rot even before the world fell apart. Lena led the group cautiously, her flashlight casting long, jittering shadows along the cracked walls. Behind her, Jonas followed, pistol in hand, while Mason helped Maria carry Emma, who was shivering quietly. David brought up the rear, keeping watch. "We should stop and rest," Maria whispered, her voice hoarse. Lena shook her head. "Not yet. We don't know where this leads." Jonas agreed, his jaw tight. "We can't risk getting cornered." As they moved deeper, the tunnel split into 2 branches. Jonas shined his light down the right side, it curved sharply and disappeared into darkness. The left seemed more open, though damp footprints led in that direction, not human footprints. Mason grimaced. "They've been here." Lena weighed their options. "We can't turn back. Left or right, pick one. Jonas pointed left. If they went that way, maybe we should go the other. Avoid crossing paths. David frowned. Or maybe they're herding us toward the dead end. Tension crackled between them until Lena raised her hand. Enough. We go right. Stay alert. The group slipped into the right tunnel, the air growing colder with every step. Small noises echoed all around them, the drip of water, the scurry of rats, the creak of old metal pipes. But beneath those sounds, Lena swore she heard something else, faint, broken whispers. Do you hear that? She whispered. Jonas paused, straining to listen. What is it? Voices. Mason scoffed nervously. There's no one left alive down here, Lena. But the whispers continued, faint but persistent, curling through the air like smoke. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed from behind. Everyone spun around, weapons raised, hearts pounding. David's flashlight flickered across the tunnel entrance, catching only the empty shadows. Probably just a rat, Jonas muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. Lena wasn't convinced either. She motioned them forward, faster now, urgency mounting. They rounded a corner and found an old maintenance room, rusted lockers, broken benches, a shattered mirror on the wall. It wasn't much, but it was something. We rest here, Lena decided. 5 minutes. No more. Emma curled up beside Maria, who tried to comfort her despite her own fear. Jonas checked the pistol's chamber again, still only 3 bullets. Mason sat quietly, staring at the ground, while David paced restlessly. We're running out of everything, Mason finally said. Food, water, ammo. Lena nodded grimly. I know. Jonas let out a bitter laugh. We're running out of luck, too. A sharp sound cut him off, a distant scraping noise, metal on concrete. Lena raised a finger to her lips, signaling silence. Everyone froze. The scraping came again, louder now, closer. Jonas crept to the door, peeking into the tunnel. His eyes widened. Lena, he whispered urgently, they're here. She jumped to her feet, grabbing Emma. Everyone, move. Now. They bolted back into the tunnel just as the first shapes emerged from the dark, gaunt, staggering figures with hollow eyes and clawed hands, their twisted bodies filling the narrow space. The group ran, footsteps pounding, breath ragged. Mason shoved aside debris, clearing a path. David grabbed Maria's arm, helping her keep up. Jonas fired a single shot over his shoulder, one less bullet, but it slowed the creatures for a moment. Up ahead, the tunnel sloped upward. There! Lena shouted. Stairs! They scrambled up the cracked concrete steps, bursting through a rusted metal door that groaned under their weight. Outside, the night air hit them like a slap, cold, sharp, and smelling faintly of smoke. They had emerged onto the edge of an abandoned rail yard. Rows of rusting train cars stretched into the distance, surrounded by barbed wire fences. Beyond that, the skeletal remains of a once bustling industrial district loomed, factories, warehouses, and crumbling office buildings. Jonas slammed the door behind them, bracing it with a metal rod. That won't hold for long, he warned. Lena scanned the area, her mind racing. We need to find shelter. Somewhere high, somewhere we can see them coming. David pointed to an old water tower nearby. There. We climb that. Get a look around. Mason hesitated. It's risky. We're exposed out here. We're exposed everywhere, Lena snapped. Move. They dashed across the open rail yard, weaving between train cars, their shadows stretching long under the moonlight. Every noise, every creak, every gust of wind, sounded like the dead closing in. As they reached the base of the water tower, Jonas boosted Lena up first, then Mason, then Maria and Emma. David climbed last, watching their backs. From the top, they could see everything, the broken city sprawled before them, lights flickering in the distance, fires smoldering, and far beyond, the unmistakable shuffling shapes of the undead, hundreds of them. Lena's heart sank. They're everywhere. But Jonas put a hand on her shoulder. We're still here. That counts for something. For a long moment, they stood together, staring out over the ruins of dead America. The fight wasn't over yet. The group huddled at the top of the water tower, shivering under the cold night sky. From up here, Lena could see how bad things truly were. The streets were crawling with the undead, their slow shuffle turning the city into a sea of death. Fires burned in the distance, some from gas leaks, others from desperate survivors trying to hold the line. Jonas sat cross-legged beside her, carefully unrolling a crumpled old map they had found in the train yard office. Mason leaned over his shoulder, chewing on a piece of jerky, eyes darting nervously between the map and the streets below. "We can't stay here," Mason said, voice tight. "We're like sitting ducks." "I know," Lena muttered. "That's why we need a plan." Maria hugged Emma close, wrapping a tattered blanket around the little girl's shoulders. David scanned the horizon with binoculars they'd scavenged days ago, his brow furrowed. Jonas traced a line on the map with his finger. "There's a military checkpoint here. If we can reach it." "Assuming it's still there," Mason interrupted. Jonas shot him a hard look. "If it's gone, we're dead anyway." Lena sighed, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. "We've made it this far. We'll make it farther." Suddenly, David stiffened, lowering the binoculars. "We've got company." Everyone tensed. "Not dead company," he clarified quickly. "People." Lena scrambled to her feet, peering where David pointed. Across the rail yard, she saw them, a small group of survivors moving quickly between the train cars. They were armed, organized. "Think they're friendly?" Mason asked. Jonas snorted. "No such thing anymore." But Lena was already moving. "We can't do this alone. We need allies." Before anyone could argue, she was climbing down the water tower. Jonas cursed under his breath and followed. On the ground, Lena raised her hands carefully, stepping out from behind a rusted boxcar. "We're not here to fight," she called. The other group spun around, weapons raised. A tall man with a rifle stepped forward, his face hard and weathered. "Then what are you here for?" "To survive," Lena answered steadily. "Same as you." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then the tall man lowered his gun slightly. "Name's Cole." "That's my crew." Lena gestured to her own group as they joined her. Lena, Jonas, Mason, Maria, David, and Emma. Cole's eyes softened slightly at the sight of Emma, shivering in Maria's arms. "Kid, huh? Brave bringing her out here." "We didn't have a choice," Lena said. Cole hesitated, then nodded. "Come on. We've got a safe spot nearby." They followed Cole's group through the rail yard to an old maintenance shed, fortified with metal sheets and wooden beams. Inside, a handful of other survivors waited, a young woman named Bree, a quiet teenager called Jay, and an older man, Frank, who was missing a hand but kept a shotgun slung over his shoulder. They offered water and some stale crackers. As they ate, Lena laid out the map. "We're trying to reach the military checkpoint north of here." Cole frowned. "I hate to break it to you, but that checkpoint fell weeks ago. We checked it ourselves." Lena's stomach sank. "There's another option," Bree offered quietly. "There's a ferry on the river. We heard it's still running, taking people across to the quarantine zone." Mason perked up. "A boat? That's our way out." Jonas remained cautious. "If it's real." "We saw it," Jay murmured. "From a distance." "It's real." Lena exhaled slowly, hope flickering in her chest. "Where is it?" Cole pointed to the map. "Southwest. Across the industrial district." David let out a low whistle. "That's deep in the red zone. Crawling with infected." "Yeah," Cole agreed. "But it's the only shot we've got." The group sat in heavy silence, the weight of the decision settling over them. Suddenly, a loud bang rattled the shed, making everyone jump. "What was that?" Maria whispered, clutching Emma tighter. Cole grabbed his rifle. Trouble. Jonas peeked through a crack in the boarded window, his face went pale. They found us. Lena's heart hammered. How many? Jonas swallowed hard. Too many. The low, guttural moans of the undead began to rise outside, a chorus of hunger and death. Cole barked orders. Barricade the doors. Bree, Jay, watch the back. Mason helped pile crates and metal sheets against the front entrance while Jonas checked their remaining bullets. Maria hid Emma under a workbench, whispering comfort. Lena stood at the center, forcing herself to stay calm. This wasn't over yet. They had a map, a plan, and now, allies. But first, they had to survive the night. And the night was just beginning. The moaning outside grew louder, filling every crack of the maintenance shed. Lena could feel the thuds reverberating through the floor as the undead began to slam themselves against the walls. Front door's not gonna hold long. Mason warned, sweat dripping down his face as he wedged another steel beam against the entrance. Cole was barking orders, moving like a man who'd survived this kind of siege before. Jay, Bree, keep the back clear. Frank, cover the windows. Jonas loaded another magazine into his pistol, hands shaking. We can't stay in here, Lena. We'll be boxed in like rats. I know, she murmured, gripping the handle of a rusty fire axe. She glanced at Maria, who was crouched under the workbench, whispering to Emma. The little girl's wide eyes shimmered with tears, but she stayed silent, brave as ever. David moved beside Jonas, shotgun ready. We fight our way out? Cole turned sharply. That's suicide. So what's the plan? Mason snapped. For a moment, no one answered. Then Bree spoke up, her voice small but steady. The drainage tunnel. Everyone turned to her. There's a tunnel under the shed, Bree explained. Old maintenance access. It runs under the yard, comes out near the river. Cole narrowed his eyes. Why didn't you say anything before? Bree lifted her chin. Didn't need to. Now we do. Without wasting another second, Lena and Cole shoved aside a heavy tool rack, revealing a metal hatch in the floor. Bree and Jay pried it open, the rusty hinges groaning in protest. A foul, musty smell wafted up from the darkness below. Jonas grimaced. Smells like a grave. Cole gave a grim smile. Better than becoming one. Outside, the undead slammed harder, their groans rising to a fever pitch. Cracks spidered along the boarded windows. We don't have time, Lena said urgently. Get the kid down first. Maria scooped up Emma and carefully lowered her into the tunnel. Jay was already waiting below, flashlight in hand, guiding them in. Go, go! Cole barked, pushing people toward the hatch. One by one, they slipped into the darkness, Maria, David, Mason, Jonas. Finally, only Lena, Cole, and Frank remained. Frank covered the door, shotgun blasting as the boards splintered. Geo, he roared. Cole grabbed Lena's arm. We have to leave him. No. Lena protested. But Frank gave them a fierce grin. I'll buy you time. With a final blast from his shotgun, Frank shoved them toward the hatch. Heart pounding, Lena slid down into the cold, wet tunnel just as the front door burst open and the undead poured in. She heard Frank's last defiant shout, then gunshots, then silence. She clenched her fists, swallowing the lump in her throat. There was no time to grieve. Cole slammed the hatch shut above them, plunging them into damp darkness. The tunnel walls dripped with condensation, the air thick with the stench of mold and decay. Jonas flicked on a flashlight, its narrow beam cutting through the black. Shadows twisted across the walls, making everyone tense. Which way? Mason whispered. Bree pointed. This way. Stay close. They moved in a tight line, feet splashing through shallow water. Lena could hear Emma quietly whimpering up ahead, Maria murmuring gentle reassurances. Cole walked beside her, his expression unreadable. "We'll make it," he muttered. "We have to." She wanted to believe him. But as they turned a corner, the flashlight flickered, and revealed something awful. A corpse slumped against the tunnel wall, half-rotted, its face frozen in a grotesque grimace. More lay scattered along the floor, bones picked clean. "Keep moving," Cole urged. Suddenly, David hissed, "Wait." Everyone froze. From up ahead came a faint, wet shuffling sound. Lena's stomach dropped. "They're down here." The group backed up, weapons raised, as shadows shifted in the gloom. A figure emerged, then another, and another. In the tight space of the tunnel, the undead seemed even more monstrous, their wet gurgles echoing off the walls. "Light!" Cole shouted. Jonas swung the flashlight beam, blinding the nearest zombie as Cole and Lena rushed forward, striking hard. The tunnel filled with chaos, gunshots, screams, the crack of bone. Mason slipped, falling into the water with a splash, but Jonas hauled him up just in time. "Go!" Lena yelled. "Don't stop." The group pushed through, scrambling over the bodies. Bree grabbed Emma, carrying her through the narrow gap between the zombies, while Maria swung a pipe at anything that got too close. Lena felt her muscles scream with exhaustion, but she didn't stop. They couldn't stop. Finally, they reached a rusted ladder bolted into the wall. Bree gestured up. "This is it." One by one, they climbed, bursting out of a metal grate into the cool night air. Lena gasped, her chest heaving. They had made it out of the tunnel. But as they looked ahead, toward the river, Lena's heart sank. The city skyline loomed dark and broken, and in the distance, more figures moved, drawn by the noise. The fight wasn't over. Not yet. The riverbank was wide and open, moonlight glinting off the dark water. For a moment, Lena allowed herself to breathe, grateful for the fresh air after the suffocating tunnel. But the moment didn't last. Jonas pointed downriver. "Look." Shapes were moving in the distance, not just one or two, but dozens. Maybe hundreds. The undead, drawn by the noise of the battle, were stumbling toward the water's edge, their pale forms ghostly in the night. "We need to move," Cole said grimly. Bree tightened her grip on Emma. "There's an old ferry downstream. If it's still there, we can cross." Mason's face twisted in doubt. "And if it's not?" "Then we run," Cole answered flatly. With no better plan, they set off along the riverbank, keeping low and quiet. The moon cast airy shadows across the sand, and every snapped twig or crunch of gravel made Lena flinch. Behind them, the ruined city loomed, once home, now a graveyard. Maria walked beside Lena, glancing down at Emma. "She's so quiet," Maria whispered. "She's strong," Lena said softly, though her own voice was tight with worry. Ahead, Bree led the way, navigating through overgrown brush and fallen trees. The group moved like ghosts, barely daring to breathe. But luck never lasted long in dead America. Halfway to the ferry site, Jonas suddenly stopped, raising a hand. "Wait." They all froze. From the trees ahead came a sound, low, wet, snarling. Lena's heart hammered. "Please no." The undergrowth parted, and a pack of feral undead stumbled into view. These weren't the slow, shuffling kind. Their skin was torn and stretched, their limbs twisted. They moved fast. Too fast. "Run!" Cole shouted. Chaos erupted. The group scattered, sprinting through the trees as the feral zombies lunged after them. Lena grabbed Maria's hand, yanking her forward. Bree clutched Emma tightly, dodging branches and rocks. Jonas fired blindly behind them, the gunshots cracking through the night. Mason stumbled but was pulled upright by David. They burst into a small clearing, and there it was. The ferry. Old, rusted, half-sunken at the dock, but still there. Cole didn't hesitate. "Get on board." Lena shoved Maria and Emma forward, helping them across the wobbly gangplank. Jonas covered their backs, yelling for Mason and David to hurry. The feral zombies were almost on them. Lena turned, swinging her fire axe as one lunged toward Jonas. She caught it square in the chest, knocking it backward. Another came at Mason, but David tackled it, slamming it to the ground. Cole fired shot after shot, backing up the ramp. "Everyone on?" "Almost." Mason gasped, dragging Jonas up the last steps. As soon as they were aboard, Cole and Lena kicked the gangplank away, sending it crashing into the river. The zombies slammed into the dock, snarling, clawing at the edge. For now, they were safe. But the ferry was barely afloat. Water sloshed in through cracked planks, and the engine was a rusted corpse. "This thing isn't moving anywhere," Jonas said grimly. Cole exhaled sharply, staring across the river. "We'll have to paddle." They tore apart old crates, using the boards to push away from the dock. The river's current caught the ferry, tugging it slowly out into the water. On shore, the feral zombies howled in frustration, pacing the edge. For a brief moment, the group sat in silence, drifting under the moonlight. Maria hugged Emma tightly, whispering soothing words. Mason slumped against the rail, exhausted. Jonas stared at his bloodied hands, trembling. Lena leaned on her axe, eyes heavy with exhaustion. Cole stood at the front, watching the far shore. "What do you think's waiting over there?" Lena asked softly. Cole didn't look back. "More of the same." Lena closed her eyes for a moment. "How long do you think we can keep doing this?" Cole was quiet, then said, "As long as it takes." She wanted to believe that. Suddenly, there was a splash. Everyone tensed, spinning toward the sound. In the moonlit water, shapes moved. Pale arms. Rotting faces. The undead were in the river. "They're swimming?" Mason gasped. Cole's face hardened. "No. They're floating. But the current's pulling them toward us." Lena gripped her axe tighter. "They're not stopping, are they?" Cole met her eyes. "They never do." As the first corpse bumped against the ferry, the survivors braced themselves once again. The night wasn't over. The fight wasn't over. Not yet. The ferry rocked dangerously as the floating undead pressed against its side. The sound of their moaning in the sloshing water filled the night air, and Lena's stomach clenched. "Keep pushing." Cole barked, jamming a broken board into the water, trying to steer the ferry away. Mason cursed under his breath, using a plank like an oar. "They're everywhere." Jonas leaned over the side, smashing a zombie's reaching hand with the butt of his rifle. "We won't make it if we tip." Lena helped Maria and Bree pull Emma to the center of the deck, away from the edge. The little girl clung to Maria, her wide eyes shining with fear. The moonlit river was crawling with bodies, some floating aimlessly, some actively clawing at the ferry. Cole gritted his teeth. "We need more speed." Mason shook his head. "The engine's dead." "Then we push." Suddenly, the ferry jolted hard, hitting something beneath the water. Jonas stumbled, nearly falling overboard. "What was that?" Bree shouted. Jonas peered into the dark water. "We hit something, rocks maybe?" Cole looked ahead. The far shore was close now, but the water here was shallow, treacherous. "We're going to have to jump." Mason's eyes widened. "With Emma?" "We don't have a choice." Lena took a deep breath. "All right. We tie a rope to Emma, one of us goes first, and we pull her across." Cole nodded, already tying the rope around his waist. "I'll go." Bree crouched next to Emma, brushing her hair back gently. "You're going to be so brave, okay? We're going to get you across." Emma nodded, her small face pale but determined. Cole plunged into the water with a sharp intake of breath. The cold hit him hard, but he pushed forward, swimming awkwardly with the rope trailing behind him. The current was rough, shoving him sideways. On the deck, Lena, Mason, and Jonas worked together to hold the rope steady, guiding Cole as best they could. Cole's feet finally touched the muddy bottom, and he staggered onto the shore, turning to wave. "All right, send her," Mason called. They carefully lowered Emma into the water, holding the rope tightly. Bree waded in beside her, helping to guide her across. The zombies in the river groaned, drifting closer. Jonas fired a warning shot, sending a ripple of panic through the undead, but it only bought them seconds. "Go, go, go!" Lena urged. Bree and Emma made it across, Cole pulling them up onto the bank. Next! Maria and Mason jumped together, swimming hard as Lena and Jonas held the line. The ferry creaked ominously under the weight of the undead pressing against it. "We have to go," Jonas said. "You first," Lena ordered. Jonas hesitated, then handed her his rifle. "See you on the shore." He dove in, swimming toward the others. Lena waited, heart pounding, as he scrambled up beside Cole. Now it was just her. The ferry shuddered again. A rotten hand grabbed at her ankle, and she stomped it away, breathing hard. With one last look at the ruined ferry, Lena leapt. The water was freezing, choking the air from her lungs. She kicked hard, pushing through the current, the rope dragging her forward. Strong arms grabbed her, hauling her onto the shore. She collapsed onto the sand, gasping. "We made it," Mason said breathlessly, sinking down beside her. Cole scanned the tree line ahead. "We're not safe yet." The group regrouped, exhausted but alive. Emma curled into Bree's lap, Maria wrapping a blanket around them both. Lena sat beside Cole, staring back at the wrecked ferry. "We lost a lot tonight." Cole nodded. "But we're still here." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the distant groans drifting over the water. Then Cole stood, shouldering his pack. "We keep moving at first light. There's a settlement west of here. They've been holding out." Lena raised an eyebrow. "You really think there's anyone left?" Cole offered a faint smile. "I have to believe there is. Or else what are we fighting for?" Lena exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the night settle on her. Despite everything, they were still standing. The fight wasn't over. And as long as there was breath in their bodies, they would keep hope alive. The forest loomed ahead, dark and silent, the trees rising like jagged shadows against the pale dawn sky. Lena adjusted her pack and glanced back at the group, Cole walking point, Mason at his side, Jonas covering the rear, Maria and Bree in the middle, guiding little Emma between them. They moved carefully, every crack of a twig or flutter of leaves setting their nerves on edge. Cole raised his fist, signaling them to stop. He crouched beside a tree, motioning Lena forward. "Tracks," he murmured. Lena knelt, studying the faint footprints in the mud. "Human?" Cole nodded. "Fresh. Maybe a few hours old." "Could be survivors," Lena whispered. "Could be raiders," Jonas added grimly, joining them. Mason tightened his grip on his bat. "Either way, we can't avoid them forever." The group pressed on, tension thick in the air. As they moved deeper into the woods, Lena's mind drifted. She thought of the old world, morning coffees, traffic jams, laughter echoing in the streets. She wondered if Emma even remembered any of it. Suddenly, Bree hissed, "Wait!" They ducked behind trees just as a group emerged ahead, 5 figures, armed, wearing patched clothing and grim expressions. Survivors. Or were they? Cole held up a hand, keeping their group hidden. He watched the strangers carefully. The tallest of the newcomers, a man with a long scar down his face, gestured to his group. "Check the traps. We'll rest here before heading back." Lena whispered, "What do we do?" Cole's jaw tightened. "We need supplies." "We approach carefully." Mason snorted softly. "And if they shoot first?" Cole gave a grim smile. "Then we find out how fast we can run." Lena took a deep breath. "Let me try. If it goes bad, you cover me." Cole hesitated, then nodded. Lena stood slowly, stepping into the clearing with her hands raised. "Hey! We don't want trouble." The scarred man spun around, raising a rifle. His group tensed, weapons drawn. We're just passing through, Lena said calmly. We have a kid with us. The scarred man squinted, then signaled to lower weapons slightly. Who are you? Survivors, like you, Lena said. We've been on the run. We heard there's a settlement west of here. The scarred man studied her for a long moment, then lowered his rifle fully. You're not the first to come through. Cole, Mason, Jonas, Bree, Maria, and Emma emerged cautiously. The strangers exchanged looks. One woman, her hair tied in a rough braid, muttered, "They've got a kid. Maybe they're telling the truth." The scarred man gave a sharp nod. All right. We're heading west too. Safer to travel together. Lena glanced at Cole, who gave a small shrug. Jonas murmured, "Better than fighting them." As the two groups joined forces, they moved carefully, watching each other with wary eyes. Along the way, they shared stories. The scarred man introduced himself as Reed. His group had lost their home 2 months ago when a massive horde overran their defenses. The others were survivors he'd picked up along the way. Cole, in turn, told them about their ferry crossing, the loss of their old camp, and the promise of the western settlement. Emma stayed close to Bree, her small hand clutched tightly. That night, as they made camp, Lena sat beside Maria by the fire. I don't know if I trust them, Maria whispered. Me neither, Lena admitted. But we can't do this alone. Maria nodded slowly, eyes distant. Do you really think we'll find safety? That somewhere is still standing. Lena looked up at the stars overhead, feeling their cold light on her face. I don't know, she said softly. But we have to keep believing. For Emma. For all of us. Across the fire, Cole sat sharpening a knife, eyes flicking between the new group and his own people. Reed caught his gaze and gave a small nod. Tomorrow, we reach the edge of the forest. After that, it's open ground. Cole's brow furrowed. Open ground is dangerous. Better than getting stuck here, Reed replied. The night stretched on, filled with the crackle of the fire and the distant howls of the undead. In the darkness, hope flickered faintly, fragile, but not yet gone. They would keep moving. They would keep fighting. Because even in the shattered remains of dead America, the human spirit refused to die. The morning light broke through the thinning trees, casting pale gold across the open plains. Lena stood at the edge of the forest, her heart pounding as she surveyed the vast stretch of land ahead. Beyond the fields, in the far distance, stood the promise they had been chasing, the western settlement. It wasn't much, just a cluster of old buildings reinforced with walls and makeshift towers. But from where they stood, it might as well have been a shining city. We're close, Cole murmured, stepping up beside her. Lena nodded, feeling a surge of hope rise in her chest. We just have to cross. Reed joined them, his scarred face tense. Scouts spotted movement, we're not alone out there. Jonas grimaced. How many? Too many, Reed said quietly. But we can't wait. That settlement closes its gates at sundown. If we miss it, we're locked out. The group gathered, huddled in a tight circle. Mason tapped his bat anxiously, Maria held Emma close, and Bree adjusted her rifle strap nervously. Lena took a deep breath. We move fast. Stay low. Watch each other's backs. Cole nodded. No heroics. We all cross together, or we don't cross at all. With hearts pounding, they broke from the treeline, sprinting across the open ground. At first, it was eerily quiet, just the sound of their feet pounding the dirt, their breath ragged in their chests. Then, a shriek split the air. From the hills, the undead emerged. Dozens of them, spilling over the ridge like a black tide. Lena felt her stomach drop. Run! The group pushed harder, sprinting with everything they had. The settlement's guards had seen them, figures appear on the towers, waving them forward, shouting. But the horde was closing in fast. Reed turned suddenly, shoving one of his own, a younger man, forward. Go! I'll hold them. Cole spun. No! We stick together. Reed gave him a hard look. If someone doesn't buy you time, none of you make it. Before anyone could stop him, Reed sprinted sideways, drawing the horde's attention with wild shouts. His group screamed after him, but he didn't look back. Lena grabbed Emma's hand, pulling her forward. Keep going. They raced across the last stretch, the settlement's gates swinging open ahead. Guards fired into the mass of undead, trying to cover their escape. Mason stumbled, gasping. Jonas hauled him up. Bree fired wildly over her shoulder, face pale but determined. With a final, desperate push, they crossed the threshold. The gates slammed shut behind them with a heavy boom. Inside, they collapsed to the ground, gasping, trembling, stunned. The guards surrounded them cautiously. You're lucky you made it, one muttered. Not many do. Cole looked up, eyes sharp. What's this place called? The guard gave a grim smile. We call it Haven. But don't get too comfortable. There's no such thing as safe anymore. As the group caught their breath, Lena sat back, wrapping her arms around Emma. They had lost so much, friends, homes, pieces of themselves. But they were here. And as long as they were breathing, there was still hope. That night, they stood on the settlement's walls, gazing out across the ruined land. Fires burned in the distance, and the moans of the undead drifted on the wind. Maria leaned on the railing beside Lena. We made it. Lena smiled faintly. For now. Cole joined them, resting a hand on Lena's shoulder. We'll figure it out. She nodded. We always do. The fight wasn't over. The world was still broken. But they were alive. And in dead America, that meant everything. They stood together, watching the horizon. Tomorrow, they would plan, rebuild, and fight again. Because even in a world where the dead rose and the living fell, courage and hope still survived. White heavy checkmark part 10 complete, 795 words. If you want, I can now prepare a full recap summary or even help draft YouTube descriptions or titles for the series. Want me to?